Good morning, students. Today we will start with Civics Chapter 2, Federalism. The subtopics that we cover in today's class are the meaning of the term federalism, difference between unitary and federal government, features of federalism, coming together and holding together federations, and the threefold distribution of legislative powers between union government and state government. Now you all can open your civics textbook, Chapter 2, Federalism. First, we will analyze with the meaning of the term federalism. This chapter, federalism, is closely associated with power sharing. In federalism, there will be a division of power between the center and the state. Federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of the country. So in very simple terms, federalism means it is the division of power, or else the sharing of power between different levels of government is known as federalism. That means the ruling becomes more easier when we share the power between the central and the state government. In this slide, in the second slide, we can see certain countries here marked in green color. So these are the countries which are following a federal form of government. The countries which are big in dimensions following the federalism, because that is easy for the execution of powers. Now let's move on to the next slide, explaining about the unitary system and federal system. Let's analyze what is the difference between unitary and a federal form of government. First, we will analyze the first and the foremost point about the unitary government as well as about the federal government. So here the first point is explaining that in a unitary form of government, there will be only one level of government. It has only one level of government. For example, United Kingdom is the best example for a unitary form of government. The prominent and the foremost feature of the federal form of government is in a federal form of government, we have more than one level of government. Our own country, India, is the best example of a federal form of government. We have central, state, as well as local governments. Now let's move on to the second point about the unitary system. The second point about the unitary system is explaining that in unitary government, central government can pass order to the states. Central government can pass order to the state or to the local governments. On the other side, in a federal form of government, the central government cannot order to the state government because they all have equal statutory powers and they are functioning independently. Now let's move on to the third point under unitary system. Here it is explaining that in the unitary government, the central government can exercise unlimited power. It means in a unitary form of government, there is no power to the local governments. The central government can exercise unlimited power in a unitary system. Whereas in the federal form of government, the central government exercises unlimited power and the central government, they don't have absolute power over the states. In the federal form of government, the central government, they does not have absolute power over the state. Now the last point related to unitary system and federal system is in a unitary system, in the unitary government, the state is answerable to the central government. In the unitary form of government, the state governments, they play only a subordinate role. So in a unitary form of government, the state government, they play only a subordinate role and they are answerable to the central government. On the other side, in a federal system, the state government is not answerable to the central government, but both the governments are answerable to the people. And in federal government, the state is independent, and in the unitary government, the state is dependent on the central government. So these are the difference between unitary government and federal system. The next slide is explaining about the key features of federalism. The first feature of federalism is there are two or more levels of government. India is the best example for a federal form of government. For example, in India, we have a union or the central government, and we have the state government, and we have the local government at the local level. So in India, we have two or more levels of government. So that is the first feature of federalism. The second point is explaining that different government govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction. This point is explaining that the same citizen is governed by different government, but each level has its own jurisdiction. This we can learn through two examples. For example, in India, we belong to a particular place. For example, currently we all are living in Karnataka, and we all belong to India. So Indian citizens governed by union government for some subjects, because the place we are currently living, Bangalore or Hyderabad or whatever it is, that is a part of India. So for certain subjects, as we belong to India, so we are governed by the union government. So for certain subjects, we are governed by the union government. At the same time, the place we are living, it is a part of a state. As I said, Bangalore is a part of Karnataka. So for certain subjects, we are governed by the state government. So for every citizen, for certain subjects, we are governed by the union government, and for certain subjects, we are governed by the state government and local government for the local issues. So the same citizen have to be governed for the various issues by different levels of government. Another example to make this point more clear, we can take the example of passport. Suppose if I want a passport, or else if any citizen need a passport, who will issue the passport? The right to issue the passport is with the union government, and it comes under the purview of Ministry of External Affairs. So before issuing the passport to a citizen, what the Ministry of External Affairs will do? The Ministry of External Affairs will take clarification from the respective state that he or she is a resident of that particular state. The Ministry of External Affairs will take the clarification from the state government. Then finally, the passport will be issued, or else the power to issue the passport is with the union government. The union government will issue the passport. In the same way, if we need an ID card or else driving license or PAN card or Aadhaar card, the state government will issue that. The state government is having the right to issue the ID cards, driving license, PAN card and Aadhaar card. So in the same way, some subjects fall under union government and some subjects fall under the state government. That is why the point is explaining that different government govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction. Now the third point is explaining that the jurisdiction of the respective levels of government are specified in the Constitution. The point is explaining that the existence and authority of each tier of government should be constitutionally guaranteed, or constitutional validity should be there. It means there should be a constitutional validity for the existence of both the governments. Then the fourth point is explaining that the fundamental provisions of the Constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government. It means the fundamental provisions of the Constitution cannot be changed unilaterally by the union government. It means the union government cannot change the power of the state government without the consent of the parliament and more than half of the states. For example, in India, we have 29 states. So if any constitutional provisions in regards to the federal structure should change or is need to be changed, means it has to get at least 2/3 majority in both the houses of the parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and it should get the approval of more than 15 states. So it is not an easy task by the union government to change any provisional laws without the consent of the states. Now, the fifth point is explaining that the highest court act as an umpire if disputes arise between different levels of government. From this point, it is very clear that India has an independent judiciary. Courts have the power to interpret the laws which are framed either by the union government or by the state government. The highest court act as an umpire of dispute arise between different levels of government. The apex court at the state level is High Court, and at the union level is the Supreme Court. And the next point is explaining that the Constitution ensures its financial autonomy to all levels of government. Autonomy means independence. So this point is explaining about financial autonomy. In order to ensure financial autonomy, federalism provides specified sources of revenue for each level of government. Every level is free in its own way to impose taxes and raise funds through which remunerative enterprises. Source of revenue for each level of government are clearly specified to ensure its financial autonomy. Here, the union government cannot block any kind of funds which are being released for the state government. So the state governments are independent to take decisions under their purview. For example, source of revenue for union government we have from the income tax department, and the percentage of share should be allotted to each state. It means the union government collects the income tax and allots a percentage of share to all the state government as per the consents of the states and union government. And the last feature of federalism is the dual objectives. It means to safeguard and promote unity of the country and accommodates regional diversity. So these are the dual objectives in a federal form of government. We know that India is a diverse country with different religion, culture, language, etc. We accept the diversity which is seen in different parts of India. For example, in the previous chapter in power sharing, we learned about Belgium. They used the consents of national unity and accommodated the different language spoken people. So that's all about the Key features of federalism. You all need to learn thoroughly the key features of federalism, because this is an important question in board examination, for examination point of view. You will get this question as a 5-mark question. So learn 5 points thoroughly. Now we will move on to the next heading, explaining about coming together and holding together federalism. First, we will analyze what is the meaning of coming together federalism. What is coming together federalism? So here in coming together federalism, the states come together on their own to form a bigger unit. For example, United States of America. Initially, it was 13 British colonies. But today, if you take, it is 50 big states, and each state, it has come together to form a bigger unit. Now, what is the benefit? So they can retain their identity and sovereignty. So that is the benefit when all these states, they come together on their own, and when they form a bigger unity, they can retain their identity and sovereignty. It means all the 50 states, they retain their identity and sovereignty. Sovereignty means the supreme authority. But if I take a country like India, which has 29 states, and different states have different powers. The states do not have sovereignty. If you take the case of India, each state does not have sovereignty. But in coming together federalism, each states have its own sovereignty. So here in India's case, the states, they don't have sovereignty, but the country have sovereignty. Means some other country cannot interfere in our political and internal matters. In coming together federalism, each state, all the states in the coming together federalism have equal powers, and each state is stronger. So in case of India, like each state does not have sovereignty, but the country as a whole is having sovereignty. So in coming together federalism, all the states have equal power. So one of the country that follow coming together federalism is United States, and other countries that follow coming together federalism is Switzerland and Australia. So as I said, in USA, it is 50 states, USA with 50 states, then it is Switzerland with 26 states, and Australia with 6 states. So the next slide is explaining about holding together federalism. Holding together federalism. So holding together federalism means in this type of federalism, the country divides its power between the constituent states and the national government, means the central government. It means, as I said, the meaning of the term federalism. In India, we are following the holding together federalism. It means the main feature of holding together federalism is we are dividing the power, or else we are dividing the power between the central government and the state government. The power is divided between the constituent states and the central government. So that is the prominent feature of a holding together federalism. And another feature of holding together federalism is, in this type of federalism, the central government is more powerful than the state government. And the third difference is, different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Means different states here have unequal powers. That means, say India is made of different states and union territories. Different states and union territories have unequal power. The countries which have the holding together federalism is in such countries, the power is shared, power is distributed between the states and the national government. The countries which follow the holding together federalism is India, Spain, and Belgium. So these three are the classic example of federalism formed by holding together. In this slide, it is explaining about the threefold distribution of legislative powers between union government and state governments. First, it is explaining about the union list. Union list includes subjects of national importance on which only the union government can make laws. For example, defense of our country, foreign affairs, banking, communications, and currency. They are included in this list to frame a uniform law and policy for the whole country. The next is state list. It contains subjects of state and local importance such as police, trade, commerce, agriculture, and irrigation. The state government alone can make laws relating to the subjects mentioned in the state list. The next is the concurrent list. It includes subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as to the state government. For example, education, forest, trade unions, marriage, adoption, and succession. Both the union as well as the state governments can make laws on the subjects mentioned in this list. If laws made by the central and state government conflict with each other, then the law made by the union government prevails. Now let's move on to the next slide explaining about residuary subjects. What is residuary subjects? The matters which are not included in any of the three lists are known as residuary subjects. It means the matters which are not included in the union list or state list or concurrent list, such matters will come under residuary subjects. Residuary subjects are those which are newly created. It means those subjects which are created after framing the constitution. For example, computer software and hardware, then cloning, cyber law, genome, all this, even including terrorism, all this will come under the category residuary subjects. By this, we conclude today's class. Now we have a quick recap of today's class. Today we learned the chapter Federalism, starting from the definition of federalism. Federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of a country. Then the features of federalism. The prominent feature of federalism is there are two or more levels of government in a federal form of government. Then the second point is different tiers of government has its own jurisdiction in specific matters of legislation, taxation, and administration. The third point is the fundamental provisions of the Constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government. Fourth point is courts have the power to interpret the Constitution and the powers of different levels of government. And the highest court acts as an umpire if dispute arise between different levels of government. Then the fifth point is sources of revenue for each levels of government are clearly specified to ensure its financial autonomy. The sixth point is the federal system is having dual objectives, that is to safeguard and promote unity of the country, while at the same time accommodate the regional diversity. Then we learned about the unitary and the federal government. In unitary government, power is centered with the central authority, whereas in the federal government, power is divided among different levels of the government like central, state, and local level government. In unitary government, there are, like it is explaining that the state will be subordinate to the central level. The existence of the state level is, we can say, it is on the mercy of the central authority. On the other side, in the federal government, there is an independent existence of all the levels of government, and in the federal government, the power is given separately to the central and the non-central level of government by the constitution. Example for the federal form of government is India, USA. India and USA have federal systems of government. And on the other side, unitary government, UK and Sri Lanka have unitary government. Then we learned about the 3 tiers of government. India has 3-tier government. That already I said, the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. The union list, it includes subjects of national importance, and state list, it contains subject of state and local importance. Concurrent list includes subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as the state government. Then finally we learned about the residuary subjects. Residuary subjects, it means the matters which are not included in any of the 3 lists, that is known as the residuary subjects. It means the residuary subjects are the subjects which are newly created, or else they were non-existent during 1940s. Such subjects will come under the category residuary subjects. Example is cyber law, computer, genome, cloning, and so on. So by this we concluded part 1 of federalism. If you have any doubts related to federalism part 1, you can you can mail your doubts to dmcsonlinequeries@gmail.com. Thank you, students. Have a good day ahead.